It seems like every year we get a new team that pops out of nowhere with revolutionary tactics in Italian football, and this year it's looking like these guys.
And here's Moise Kean! Goodmanson!
The kind of football they've been playing this year has been incredible, and it's all thanks to this guy, Raffaele Palladino, the man at the dugout who is leading Fiorentina to an unprecedented charge in Serie A. 8 wins in Serie A this season, including 7 in the last consecutive games, beating the likes of Roma and AC Milan in the process. You pretty much get the idea by now. These guys aren't playing, and it's all down to incredible tactics, and 2 guys who've been taking the league by storm. So who is Raffaele Palladino? A former professional himself, Palladino announced himself onto the scene when he secured Monza's biggest win in Italian football. On his debut as head coach of Monza, he helped the team secure a 1-0 win over the record Serie A holder Juventus. It didn't just end there. He helped the team beat the odds and avoid relegation as well. And 1 year later, in June 2024, La Viola took note and decided to make him the team's new manager. So how's he changed the club? And what tactics is he using to get the best out of the team? Well, to understand this, we've got to first understand what Fiorentina was before Palladino arrived. Under former head coach Vincenzo Italiano, La Viola rose to become a bogey team in Italian football again. In the 3 years he spent as manager, they finished 7th, 8th and 8th respectively. And in between that, almost won a European trophy. They made it to the final of the Europa Conference League back-to-back, losing out to West Ham and Olympiacos. These defeats would have been tough to take, but it was a sign of the work Italiano and his Fiorentina team had put in to get to that point, but ultimately it wasn't enough. The defeat to Olympiacos was a final straw, and Italiano himself confirmed that he was going to be leaving the club at the end of the season. When asked why, he stated that it was because he didn't feel he could take the club any further, despite the demands. The point with all of this is that Vincenzo Italiano was making steady progress with Fiorentina, and now he was all set to leave. The club was expected to regress, and the early season results seemed like that would be the case. They were winless in their first 4 opening games of the season. But there was something about these oddly curious results. Out of the first 4 league matches, they lost once in a 3-2 thriller to Atalanta and had 3 draws in the other fixtures against Venezia, Parma and Monza. And seems like this kind of gave the team the momentum a bit, because after that they began to build. They beat Lazio for the first win of the season and followed that up with a draw to Empoli. We'll get into that result later, but the idea behind this, that the team was expected to struggle under new coach Palladino, but rather it's been steady improvement that's seeing the club on the up. So how? What are they doing differently then? And how are Palladino's tactics reshaping Fiorentina? The biggest change with Fiorentina this season has to be the defensive structure and how they set out from the back. Palladino sets out the defensive structure on a man-to-man basis. What this means is that they defend in a man-to-man system on the pitch, where each player, instead of having zones, has a man they're supposed to be on at all times on the pitch. By using this system, they make it incredibly hard for their opponents to find open spaces, and in turn leads to turnovers which they can quickly capitalize on. By closing the opposition man-to-man, they can immediately turn play over, and as Moise Kean's goal shows here, have the ability to then drive into these spaces, pick out a teammate, and get into goal-scoring opportunities. Now, the thing with the man-marking system is the risk involved. This one is simple. With this system, if they get too close to the opponents, they're at risk of either getting beaten by a dribble and then exposed, and to this effect, Palladino has a solution. While they have players they are accountable for on the pitch, and that's with the man-marking system, they'll never get too close, never closer than they need to be, and this is to avoid the risk I just stated earlier. So in essence, what this means for La Viola is that the closer they are to the ball will determine how close they can get to the opposition, and the further they are from the ball will in turn determine how far they can be from it. When it comes to the personnel they've got at the back, Palladino is turning a couple of relatively unknown players into some of the best in the league at the moment. The likes of Lucas Martinez Quarta, Luca Ranieri, and even Matias Moreno at centre-back, they've all been rock solid this season, part of a defence with the 4th most clean sheets in the league with 6. There's also something pretty interesting to note about Fiorentina from a defensive angle this season, and it's how the fullbacks play. Robin Gosens was a constant threat in this game, and aside from the goal, it was the fluidity with which he was swinging crosses that's the key point here. The fullbacks, which have for large parts this season been Robin Gosens and Brazilian Dodo, have the license to invert and find spaces high up the pitch as well. This is because Palladino wants his team to be progressive and attack from the back. And so really for him, defense is the key. Initially it started as a back 3-4-2-1 when Palladino was still in the testing phase of his tactics at the club, but now reverting to a back 4, it's 4-2-3-1, and in the middle of the pitch, that's where the real magic happens. Edoardo Bove has been a sensation for Fiorentina this season, and alongside other players which we'll talk about as the video progresses, in that midfield role, he understands what the assignment Palladino wants from him is. Together with Yassine Adli, Palladino makes use of two holding midfielders who act as pivots, who both have the technical qualities to advance play with progressive passes and forward runs, while also being able to put in a shift defensively. The difference here, though, is that Palladino is being innovative with the way he sets his team up from midfield. The number 10 will drop into those little pockets of space to link up play, or link up with the forward line. And for large parts of the current season, it's been Albert Gudmundsson. And he's been doing a proper job in there. He scored the winner versus Milan, but it's the position he arrives and picks up that's worth noting. With this 4-2-3-1 system, Palladino's team offers fluidity and movement, players interchange, and understand the roles they have to perform in the team. Speaking of roles, here's the one Football Historia has for you, delivering quality videos like this to you, and in turn, all you've got to do is hit that subscribe button to the channel for more content. If there's one important thing Palladino has shown the world with his Fiorentina team this season, it's that he's getting the best individually and collectively out of his players. Let's start with this guy, a man who at Manchester United many believed Erik ten Hag had written off. Despite being one of the best goalkeepers in the world, the general problem with David De Gea was that he couldn't play out from the back.
The players that are not here in Zaha, Elise, Eze.
I mean, look at former United manager Ten Hag tearing into him for going long. However, with Palladino, it's different. De Gea's not just playing, he's back to his brilliant best. He saved 2 penalties in the win over Milan a couple of weeks back, and even has an assist to his name this season. In the 3-1 win versus Verona, De Gea's in sensational form now, and a key part of this current team under Palladino. But he's not the only one catching the eye. In attack, which it's a rejuvenated version of a player many had forgotten, failed spells at PSG and Everton, and didn't really make the cut at Juventus. When he made the switch to La Viola, it seemed like Moise Kean's story was going to be a familiar one we've seen time and time again. A prospect who couldn't make the cut at a big team, and begins to bounce around different leagues as a result. Well, it's different with Kean now. He has 9 goals and 1 assist in Serie A this season, including a hat-trick against Hellas Verona. He's been called up to the national team as well, where he bagged against Israel. Scored in his only game in the Europa Conference League so far, Moise Kean is balling, and it's because Palladino is getting the best out of him.
Reagire quando ho delle occasioni così, so come non reagire, so come... È stato un anno di insegnamento per me. Beh, la mia famiglia è sempre stata vicino a me, però comunque alla fine davanti allo specchio ti ritrovi sempre, capito? Da solo. E quindi nei momenti bui...
Seems in that first meeting, as he said in the interview, Palladino understands him. He just wants to have fun on the pitch when he plays, and it's easy to forget that despite the clubs he's played for, Kean is still only 24.
Ma io sono rimasto molto sorpreso ovviamente dai tanti giovani forti che ci sono qui a Firenze. Faccio i complimenti al...
But there's another strength of Palladino's game. As it was stated in the interview, working with a lot of young talent, Palladino became a young manager himself, and he seems to have the ability to get the best out of young players. Kean has the 2nd most goals in the league this season. He's enjoying himself all right, and that's because Palladino is allowing him to. Still on young players, it's not just the ones he's got at the club, but he's also making a lone army count. Edoardo Bove, one of the shining lights in Serie A this season, and a player who seems to be really progressing under Palladino. The excellent goal against his parent club Roma wasn't just the only highlight he's got this season. Sitting in that number 6 role, he's part of the double pivots in the team alongside Yassine Adli, and he's excelling. He's got 24 tackles this season, averaging 2.57 tackles per 90, which ranks him in the 94th percentile in the league category. 124 ground duels, out of which he's won 62, which ranks him in the 90th percentile in the league. He's a tenacious warhorse in midfield, and he's showing for Fiorentina this season he has the technical ability to match it. Can't mention Bove without mentioning his partner in that pivot role, that's Yacine Adli. I wonder what the deal is with Fiorentina players and scoring against the clubs they're on loan from. Yacine Adli has been quietly going about his business in Serie A this season, while Bove is one grafting in the hard yards in terms of tackling. Adli is the smooth operator between the duo. His 293 out of 341 passes completed this season ranks him in the 90th percentile for successful passes in the league, with 13 key passes, averaging 2.38 key passes per 90, the 95th percentile in this category. He's like a passing linchpin in the heart of midfield and helps to make the team tick, still part of his loan army, robbing Gosens from Union Berlin on loan for the season, and steadily proving himself as one of the best fullbacks or wingbacks in the league. And that's saying a lot considering he's up against the likes of Theo Hernandez and Federico Di Marco. Much like Kean, Gosens was also a player tipped with potential a few years back, so much so that Inter Milan spent big to get him from Atalanta in January 2022. But the move didn't work out. He then moved to Union Berlin, where the conditions remain the same. But under Palladino and Fiorentina this season, he's been flying. Gosens is back to that brilliant form that saw him make Germany's team for the 2020 Euros, and he fits perfectly into the system too. Ultimately, apart from improving players and having his team play nice football, Palladino will know that his job can only be termed as a success based on results. And to this end, he's got his team performing. The 2-0 win over Como wasn't the team's best performance of the season, and while he rightfully admitted that, in the end it was about getting the result, and that's what matters. For Palladino, it's an honest assessment. We're dealing with a guy who is as open-minded as they come. He only just retired from active professional football 5 years back, at a time when Juventus was dominating Serie A, and he was still coming up against the majority of the coaches he's facing now as a player, and to be mixing up against these guys like this, it's all just an opportunity he's grateful for. Just watching them play again, it's easy to see why people might not be talking about them. And maybe it's because they don't want it, the attention that comes with the noise. Think about it. Serie A right now is as tight as ever. The top 5 teams are just separated by a single point. Fiorentina is in the mix too, and alongside European competition, it's going to be a very interesting couple of months coming up for them. Now, I did say at the start of the video that it almost feels like every year we get a new team, no one seems coming that shakes up Serie A. Last season it was Bologna, inspired by the current Juventus coach Thiago Motta. This season it's Fiorentina, except they aren't exactly new to this. Getting back to the finals of back-to-back European competitions is no easy feat. They might not have won it, but they built a proper team that impressed in both years. With Palladino and the current team, it's about believing in the system. They have a style and a certain way they want to play, and so far, it's not just been bold and exciting, it's delivering results. With all that's been said so far, this is a team that has lost just once in the league this season. Having come up against the likes of Lazio, AC Milan and Roma in that run, this is very impressive. Just like Fiorentina, there's a bunch of teams taking Europe by surprise this season. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but one of them is Chelsea. From a seemingly disjointed outfit over the last 2 years, Enzo Maresca is quietly building a team with a scary new game plan that could make the Blues upstage the competition in the league this season, and click the next video to find out how.